Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast. Today I've got a really great friend and speaker on, Abby, who is going to talk to us a little bit about her life. So, hi Abby.
Hi, hey Jay, how are you?
Good. How are you? I'm so glad we could catch up.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on this podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And it's
No,
good to catch up once again.
I know. We haven't seen each other for a few months.
I know. But I've been seeing all the good, great things that you do on LinkedIn. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm here to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you've been doing. So,
Okay.
just before we do start, do you want to just tell all our listeners who you are, where you're from?
My name is Abiola Akinbiyi. Majority of people call me Abi. I'm from African descent and originally from Nigeria. And I'm a mom, a loving wife, a caring daughter. I call myself a mompreneur because I'm actually an entrepreneur as well. I'm a health professional. I'm into nursing and education, and I'm a community advocate as well. Work so much in the community, just advocating for others and people that look like me. And yeah, so I wear so many hats in my little space. And yeah, I believe that's who I am. And there's more to come. I'm just discovering myself. So when the list goes on, I'll let you know.
I know. Do you have one of those business cards that fold out now?
No, unfortunately, I just keep it simple as myself. My name and my phone number. And any other thing you can take anything out from it.
So your one of your first qualifications was as nursing.
No, my first qualification actually was Bachelor of Pure and Applied Mathematics.
Oh, cool.
So I had my first degree ever was Pure and Applied Mathematics. So when I came here, I was so much into IT because there was this future about IT when I came 21 or 20 years ago. And I did my postgraduate diploma in information system. Then I did my master's in information system technology. And I was really into it. But then I was working in an aged care facility at that time as a carer. And I loved it. So I was in between because I couldn't get a full-time job then because I had to go to school, was a full-time study. And I kind of asked all the nurses in there mainly because I didn't have the opportunity of growing up with my grandmother. My grandmother died when I was really small. And I was working in that aged care. I see how they look after people. And I was like, let me see. I might actually like to do this work. And because they always have a nurse. And there's an hierarchy where you work. And I asked the nurse, she was like, oh, you could do Bachelor of Nursing. And I was thinking about PhD then to do my PhD in health informatics. And I went to Victoria University. It was so funny because I was about 7 months pregnant. And the lady looked at me and said, you want to study? I'm like, yeah. And yes, and then I went there mainly because I wanted to do what they called enrolled nurse. There was a certificate for in nursing. It wasn't called diploma of nursing then. Yeah. And then she said, have you got any qualification? And I said, yes, because my IT degree was done in Australia at CQ University. Yeah. And then she had a look. She was like, why do you want to do a certificate for? We've got a program called graduate entry. It's a Bachelor of Nursing, and then you start from year 2. Which is the second year. I was like so excited. I'm like a whole 1 year off my curriculum. Let's do it. Bring it up. And then she was like, but I'm not sure whether you can do it because of your condition. And there's a 3-month bridging course. And if you pass, then you go into that graduate entry program. But if you don't pass, then you don't get in there. And I remember coming home and I was just thinking, I think I can do this. I was a little bit sick with the pregnancy. I've got hyperemesis gravidarium, and I was just like, I think so. I psyched myself up because I was thinking about the benefits of going to the second year. And because I did science in my high school before, because I did science, biology, chemistry, and stuff. So I could relate with some of the materials. And that was how, did the bridging course, passed, and find myself in second year of nursing. And that's how my nursing journey started.
Oh, wow. So you finished your nursing degree at VU?
VU, yes, Victoria University.
And I need to let the listeners know that you also won the People's Choice Award for 2000. What was it? 2022?
21.
21.
You were the 2022 winner, AJ.
Yeah. I won this. Yeah, 2022, 2021 winner. What was that like?
For me, I think, honestly, when they actually sent me when I got the email of being one of the finalists in the Professional Achievement Award, that's already done it for me. I wasn't really expecting anything more than that. And then I look at it, it gives me a reflection of my journey, knowing that, because I did that. I finished at VCUNY in 2009, I think, I presume 2009, 2010, I think 2009. And for me, I was just thinking about the journey of how I started and what I've done after that time, which is probably almost a 10 years interval between when I finished and when I got the award, almost more than 10 years. And I remember the pain of the struggle, the resilience that when I first started, to be honest, I didn't really like it. I didn't have a choice. I was in the exploitative state. You come to a new country, you're trying to find your grind, you're trying to get a better job. Where's the better job? Is in health. I'm conflicted. I've got to go do a PhD. Now I'm in my class, pregnant with year 12 students. So when I got that, that email about, you're one of the finalists and someone nominated you and, you've actually crossed to this path, it's brought me so much joy in the sense that not just for myself, but for all the journey that I've passed through and people that are passing through the same journey as me, especially because when you work in aged care at that time, it wasn't really something that is prestigious. It wasn't a job that you're proud that you're doing, especially when you've got all those degrees, which there are so many people in my shoes around that time, even up to now, that are working in the field that doesn't belong to them. But knowing that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, knowing that even in that journey, what you do after all those time can be recognized and can be seen as something that is worthy of an award. So, and when the award part comes in, once I told my friends about, I'm a finalist, they were so excited. And I said, there's a part of voting. And everybody just went ballistic about the voting. And sometimes they're calling me, I went to VCUNY, so, blah, blah, can I vote for you? I'm like, and they were giving me anxiety. I'm like, this has already done it for me. And then when I won the award, I was, super proud of myself, I'll say, feeling thankful, grateful, and very humbled that, it's in this present world that we lived in, especially with different diversity, inclusion, discrimination, that's not only my friend, that people that are not my friend, that read some of the stories from being a finalist, who believe in me and vote for me. I don't even know who voted for me. And I just know that for you to be voted in is the majority of the votes. So, and I'm very thankful for that. That means that just gives me a bit of confidence that I'm actually doing something right.
Yeah. So besides making you feel really great, how else has winning this award done for you in your career or your personal life?
I think in my personal life, honestly, to be honest, is one of those things, because I've had some few awards before that time. But in terms of academic, for me, it's more about how I've inspired other people. So in my personal life, I said, yes, I've done it. It's great. It's not something that I really kind of just sit on all the time, because I know there's so much to be done. So to me, it's just, like I said, it's a step like, yes, you're doing the right thing. You can actually help others to get this as well. Like, how do we help others? How do we harness the power and make sure, an award is one thing, but some people have done so much great things than me, right? I wouldn't probably say I'm fortunate, because someone always say you have to appreciate the work that you've done as well. So I was happy to receive the award, but for me, it's actually give me a bit of more, I would like to say, energy to keep going and to keep inspiring others. So for me, that award is about inspiration for others in terms of academic career, to make sure that wherever you find yourself at the moment. So it gives me the confidence to talk to people, because you're in the light where people have seen what you've achieved, and people will come to you to ask that question. So in my personal life, it gives me lots of an opportunity to tell my story. If I don't get that award, I won't be here, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's to me, it's an opportunity to share my story, to inspire others, to encourage others. So that's what it's done for me in my personal life, to really believe those things that you've seen with your role model telling you it's possible, and you are part of a living testimony that it's actually possible. So for me, it's a two-way thing. It's something that I'm happy about, that I appreciate. And it's another thing to say, look, this is just the beginning of another journey for me and for others.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Do you actually have any role models yourself that you look up to?
Yes, I do. And role modeling can be very dangerous, to be honest.
Yeah.
I have a couple of them. And I always said a couple. I'm not a kind of, I have a couple. I'm still adding to the list, and I try not to 100%, imitate someone. So from all my role model, I always have a bits and pieces of everyone. So for me, Oprah Winfrey is one of them, because for me, I can see the struggle. And she inspires me, even though I haven't met her personally. It's just something that gives me hope. And when I listen to her, there's some elements of my journey that I can relate with. And there's so many things I can use from what she says. And I'm like, I always say, everybody has their own light and their own spirit. So even though you have a role model, you should be able to make sure that you live your own life as well, but live in terms of their values, their morals, and see if it's aligned with yours. Because sometimes it does. People do change. I do have a role model before. I'm not going to mention the name, that used to be my role model, and I just crossed the person off the list. But and it happens sometimes. So that's why I always say, don't be too much fixated on role model. Yeah. But at the same time, appreciate the pathway that they have created for you in terms of how we live our life. So I do have about 5 role models at the moment. Still adding to the list of role modeling and understanding myself in that pathway. So for me, if I look at anyone for a role model, as a role model, they have to have good moral. They have to be humble. They have to be honest in their journey, because we'll have so many people these days, they never talk about their real journey. They just try to give you that, they quote all those things for you to make sure that it's easy, or sometimes some people make it look so harder than it was. So I'm just looking for someone that is true to self, and majority of the time, for me as a person, as a being, is about a role model that gives back to the community and able to support others to rise. So those are the qualities I look for in role modeling. So yes, I do have role models.
Yeah. How hard has your journey been?
Wow, where do I start? I told you earlier on before we started, how I crossed the Australia, come from Africa to this place, and being pregnant, exploitative. I think my journey so far it's been hard, but at the same time, I acknowledge that some journeys are harder than mine. So to me, I don't actually attribute the word hardship to my journey. I call it an experience. So and I do that because I don't want to have a negative connotation about how I got here. I want it to be a kind of thing that shaped me. So my journey, some people will listen to them like, oh my goodness, that is so hard. But while I'm passing through them, they were hard, but I didn't let them hold me back. So to me, it was just one of those things. So it was like, when you go for a cruise and there's, when you're going for when you're flying and there's turbulence, that feeling, that moment. And then it becomes the flight becomes smooth again. So and when I get to my destination, I will never go back to that turbulence unless it's needed. So I saved all those hard moments for my resilience. I save it for my hard situation that I faced at the moment sometimes. I'll just go back to it and say, how did I survive, and bring it back. So it's been hard, especially migrating from Africa to here, trying to find my feet here, going through lots of discrimination, racism, and honestly, there's some things that you heard about before you travel. And when you get to that space, it's a different story entirely. You think you've got tough skin to handle them, but when it comes straight to your face, it's just, especially from, a Western world where you're thinking you're going for a greener pasture, and you realize it wasn't even as green as what you thought. In fact, it wasn't even green. Let me even use that word. Because it depends on how people migrated here. I came here as a skilled migrant to Australia, and my expectation was high because, like I mentioned to you, when I came here, I already had a bachelor degree in pure and applied mathematics, and it was an honorary degree for 5 years. So I was expecting, I don't have that barrier of English barrier, because English is the lingua franca in Nigeria. That's the official language. I do not have that barrier of, oh, you didn't go to school, you're not educated. I didn't have that degree. I have a little bit, but not that much, of adapting into the new country. And I was just thinking, those are the things that up to now people still say it's a barrier. People capitalize on it, especially with migrant and refugee community. And, I'm not even going to go there. It's even sad that up to this moment, we're still talking about those barriers. But for me, I was thinking I've already escaped some of them, that I shouldn't be, I shouldn't be like being treated like some people that still have that barriers. That was my own mentality then, that at least to some extent, I think I've, navigate this barrier. I have a certificate. Let me go get a job. And then the reality set in for 3, 4, 5 months. And a friend of mine saw me and said, what kind of job are you applying for? And she said to me, no, you have to go for the low job, like cleaner, and which to me, from where I come from, was, it was a job that was given to people that didn't go to school, like a non-skill, people from the village. And coming here as an educated African woman, you're thinking you should have a pedestal or a kind of step to step on. And the way people talk to you, even sometimes people mock your accent when you're trying to talk to them. And it was just, to me, I won't call it ridiculous, but it was just, it was strange. But because while coming, I've already read a little bit about the history. Look, well, I'm Black. This thing is embedded in the history of, Black people, the negative narratives about Black people. So I've already navigated those paths a little bit. So coming here and experiencing it was bad, but because it was something that I've read about, it was something that I've known that might happen or it's going to happen, I didn't give it that much oxygen. So, yeah.
Do you find Australia a racist country?
Do I find Australia a racist country? I think it depends on individual, to be honest. I wouldn't generalize the word Australia, because I've met very, very good people from Australia as well, some of them that have helped me, and they don't look at my skin or where I come from. But when you look at it from, I think it's systematically racist. It's embedded in the system, I would say. Whether that's, whether that's something that is, I wouldn't say, maybe whether that's something that is intentional or non-intentional, I don't know. But I just think there's some policies in the Australian system that need to be reviewed. There's some embedded corporate laws and, regulations that I think has a racist aspect to it. So I wouldn't generalize and said Australia is a racist country, because look, like you said, I've come here, I've went to school here, I've got an award here. There's always a two line to a story. So there's a flourishing part and there's that add part where what it takes you to flourish. Would it have been different from another Western country? I don't think so. I think, being Black and having that discrimination against Black people in majority of the countries in the whole world, and I can say that, with confidence, that I wouldn't think it's going to be different from in any other country.
When you first got to Australia, what was one of the hardest things to get used to, or things that you go, oh my God, this is way so different?
The food. Oh my goodness, I was traumatized for 3 weeks. The food, because there's like when in my country, there's a particular food that you eat and you think is the Western world food. I'm like, oh, there's rice, there's plantain. So there's some food that are indigenous food back home that you eat with your hand, and there's a way you eat it. Those are the real proper traditional food. And there's some food you go to the restaurants, fancy restaurant back home. So you're expecting those fancy restaurant food are the what they eat in the Western world, right? Yeah. So I got here, and the first thing I was expecting to see, I was thinking rice is a common thing. Who doesn't eat rice? So to me, it was like, it should be in any restaurant. Walk into this charcoal chicken, and before I even get the charcoal chicken shop, I was looking everywhere. Where's rice? I'm like, then I left the place, went to another place, there was no rice. And I'm like, onto some people's menu, because I was living in a motel then. And I'm like, there's only one rice. And then they gave me the rice. I said, rice and chicken. So this lady brought the rice and a chicken separately. So the first thing I'm asking for was, where's the stew? When we eat, there's always a rice and the sauce, when you go to Asian shop, and there's a curry stir fry. And someone said, I was looking for chicken as well. And the way they make the chicken was quite different. And someone said, if you really want chicken, you need to go to the Asian shop. So I went to the Asian shop. I saw this thing that really looked like what I wanted to eat. And I saw the rice. I saw a bit of chicken. And I said to the guy, is this thing very peppery? Does it have chili? And he said, no, you want chili sauce? I said, yes. So he grabbed this sweet chili sauce all over my white rice. And I was so happy. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go home and eat. Got home, taste the chili sauce. It was sugary. There was a lot of sugar. I'm like, what is this? So I just got, and that was why sometimes it's good. I got back to because I brought some few, and I couldn't cook because I was living in a motel. Yeah. So I got some few dry food from Africa that I brought in here that are more like cornflakes, because it's dry, and then I keep drinking that for the next 2 weeks. So that was one. The second shocker for me was, I think it was the culture as well, where the first thing was the transportation. I had a look at the tram and I'm like, what is this thing? Like, it's not a car and it's not a train. Yeah. And I always got lost in that tram. Up till now, I still got lost in tram, because to me, they look as if they're going straight, but they just, so I don't even, up till now, I'm like, tram, what stop? And the other thing is the culture, where people will see you, and back home in Africa, you say hello, hi to everyone. People will say hi to you, but people are just so busy here. And when you come to approach them for something, it feels strange to them. Some people they don't want to talk to you. Yeah. And I think the most shocker for me was realizing that people that live in a particular neighborhood does not even know the name of their next street. So that time was the time of Melway. So I just got a job as a carer, looking for direction, and I got lost. You know how you flip from page 36 in the Melway to page 46? You're trying to join together. It's good I have a good grade in geography. I think I would have been lost in Australia. And then I'll stop someone on the way and ask them, look, I'm in the neighborhood already, looking for that aged care or nursing home or my friend's house. And they said, I don't know. And I'm like, do you live around here? They're like, yes. So how come you don't know? I said, oh, do you have a Melway? I'm like, yes. They'll check the Melway. So to me, people's sense of direction, especially where you live. In Africa, if you ask me about the 10th or the 15th street, maybe because I walk around, I know them. I know who lives there. I know the name. So to me, it was just that detachment from your environment, from the people that live next to you. And my neighbor for almost 6-7 months, we never say anything to each other. And sometimes I was just like trying to be friendly. So to me, that was a bit of a shock as well. And coming here knowing that as a skilled migrant, that the job is not actually as available as people say. it's not even the journey is not that rosy, whereby people said, oh, it's not that smooth, because the expectation was once you move to the Western world, then your life will become better, but then you have to work for it. Yeah. So I wasn't expecting to work 3, 4, 5, 6 times harder to get to where I am at the moment. So to me, it was a shock, but life goes on.
Do you go home often? Do you actually go back to Africa often?
Not really.
Yeah.
Probably, I think I've been back about 3 or 4 times in my 20 years of being here. It's a long, I told you earlier, it's a long journey. One, I had this flight phobia.
Yeah.
I have the fear of flying. And if it's for 3 hours, yes. But by the time I started sitting down, thinking about the first 18 hours flight, 6 hours flight, I already lost interest. And I think technology has really done it for me. Because with technology, like I can call my mom, I could call my brothers, my sisters, I can see them, even before we start having Zoom, there's something called all these FaceTime, Yahoo Messenger then that we used to use. Yeah. So I think that kind of softened that, the sense of missing home, and you could go to the internet and still watch what is happening. So internet kind of bridge the gap of really, really missing home for me.
Yeah. So last time you did go home, did home change at all since you left 20 years ago?
Yes, a lot. I went, I think, was it 4 or 5 years ago? And it's actually great that you asked that question, because I'm just going to diverse a little bit. That when you're here, you're not well accepted to be like an African Australian. Once you move back home, you're not even expected to be an African, because you've got a bit of, maybe Western world way of thinking. So you're not really even fully accepted as a person who is 100% African when you go home. So they'll know that you're African, but when you're talking, they're like, oh my God, why are you thinking this way? So your thinking has changed. So when I go home, when I went home 4 years ago, the demographic have changed. There was one embarrassing moment. This is a podcast. I'm not sure whether I should share it, but I'll share it. Because the landscape has really changed. I went with my 2 daughters, and I was like, and they were so excited. And because the last time they went, they were really small. But when we went 5 years ago, they're grown up. Not grown up, but at least, one of them was like, I think was 13. The other one was about, I think 13 and 9. So they're not that small. So they were really excited. And I didn't want to tell people that I was coming. It was going to be a surprise for my mom. So I didn't tell my mom I was coming at all. I just said to her, someone is coming, that's my friend. Got to the junction, like, when you have a suburb, and I couldn't recognize that suburb. I couldn't find the way to my own house. It took 30 minutes. And I didn't want to call anyone to say, like, because I want to surprise them, and the surprise just went wrong. Because all the landmarks.
You couldn't check the Melway?
There was no Melway, and there was no GPS. And then my daughter was like, my 2 daughters was like, oh, this is so embarrassing. You don't know the way to your own house. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Because it's really developed. All the landmarks, the tree that I used to play under has gone, is now like a filling station. Even the roads has changed. There's lots of development in Africa now. The landscape has changed. And even talking to people who hasn't traveled before, my friends, my relative, there isn't that much of a gap in knowledge. And I think that's what internet has done. So I was able to relate with them. There was nothing like going back to something, you know what I mean, in memory lane about, oh, this has changed. So when you're talking to them, they've catched up as well. So when they were able to catch up to some extent, they might not be able to see it, but they have knowledge about it. So that was a good part of it, because it makes the conversation easier. So I don't have to describe everything. Like my uncle that would come from London when I was 4 years old, and he would try to describe this thing for us, and he would keep on going and going. I'm like, just forget about it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So home has changed. Infrastructure has changed. It's more developed. A lot of awareness, education about diversity, inclusion, and changing the narratives of our history as well. So I can see back home, people have embraced their identity a lot. Unlike when we're growing up, because of what we're being like, like something that we're being exposed to. So what we're being exposed to is more like embracing the Western world, the Caucasian way of living. Your hair, like it has to be straight to be seen as someone who is doing well in the community. The way you talk, you have to change your accent to, mimic the queen. You have to dress and wear suits, and that's when people will respect you. That was then because of the television. It was a one-way communication. But now I go home, I see people wearing fabrics like this, even to work. I see them taking their own braids and their own hair to work and loving it. And I think to me, it's a great development. Just changing that narrative and owning the new narrative of the future.
Yeah. Question: when you first got to Australia, could you understand our accent?
Absolutely.
Oh,
I never have, to be honest, I never have issues with Australian accents.
Okay.
Not even with any accent. I think probably because I can be a good listener.
Okay.
No matter how hard the accent is, I can't even tell the difference sometimes.
What about our slang?
No, the slang I'm not used. The first thing I learned was mate. I'm like, and then I was working in this nursing home, and one of my, Australian friends said to one guy, I'm just gonna call him Jack, I won't say his real name, and said, "Hi, mate." I'm like, mate is 91. Jack is 91. How can he be your mate? Even now, I still struggle with it. Like, how can a 91-year-old man be a mate of someone that is 26? So to me, I just said, this guy is so rude. Each time I'm working with that guy, I'm like, this guy is so rude. Look how he's calling everybody mates. They're not your mate. They're your grandpa. They're papa. They're mamas. Oh, yeah. So some of the slang and some other slangs that they use in Australia as well, that I just think it's not like that good for people from multicultural communities. And, I think for me, I wasn't really paying that much attention. If I don't understand it, I'll ask and people will laugh.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they will laugh, they tell me what it means. And sometimes they're worried about me knowing what it means and think maybe I'm going to feel offended. But I came from a family that, honestly, you have to have thick skin to live in my family. We make fun of anything and everything. So everything is just like, they're very witty and good sense of humor. So sometimes when people say things to me, I'll just, oh, that's a bit funny. But then I can call them back and say, apparently that's not funny, because you might say it to someone else and they won't find it funny.
Yeah. What's your job now? What do you do now? Good
question. I get that question all the time.
Because you do a lot.
I do so many things.
Yeah.
So I narrow it down. My job now is I work as a clinical manager. I was as a manager at a specialist mental health clinic, and I run an event planning business as well, together with a clothing line, a new clothing line, about African clothing line, like the one I'm wearing at the moment, and also one of the commissioners at the Victoria Multicultural Commission, and I sit on the board of Ethnic Community Council of Victoria, but that's not really a job. That's more like an advocacy, organization. So,
yeah. So what? So I know you're really passionate in mental health.
Mm-hmm.
What made you interested in mental health?
Okay, mental health wasn't love at first sight.
Yeah.
It was something that actually finished a graduate diploma in graduate certificate in mental health last year, because I just felt that the landscape changed. I think I was when I finished my studies, I was trying to explore, do I want to go into mental health nursing or do I want to be a surgical nurse? And I think that was when I was doing for there's what they call the grad year, when you do the grad year. So I was looking for a grad year that will offer me 50-50 experience in both mental health and general nursing. But unfortunately, I didn't get that one. I get the one for general nursing. So when I finished my nursing, I had a placement. No, yes, it was a clinical placement.
Yeah.
I haven't finished the nursing then. It was a clinical placement at the mental health ward. It was a mother-baby unit. And I just had a baby then. Remember, I was pregnant when I started.
Yeah.
And I was working in a mother-baby unit and relating to some of the consumers there. And I just felt, like even in mental health, when you talk about a baby and a mother, we were being brought up to believe that no matter how bad your mental health is, no matter how, worse your mental health is, even in my country, they say when you talk about mental health, you talk about being mad. So you're not talking about mental health here is a different thing. If you talk about mental health when I was growing up and where I come from, there is a stigma to it. It's a different kind of way of perceiving people with mental health. So working in that mother baby unit and seeing the detachment between mothers and their babies, and I couldn't comprehend it. I was like, this is your baby. How can you not love the baby? How can you not want to be with the baby? And sometimes they're looking at the baby is crying. So it makes me to want to explore more and know about what exactly is wrong with them. And because my husband works in that field as well in mental health, and he's been, working in mental health for a long, long, long time. So for me, it's just about understanding what exactly is going on and how can we help, rather than, because I just realized for me, it's a part of a guilt feeling as well, because going back to some of my friends back home and the way they behave and how they act, we just kind of label them as bad people. Nobody wants to talk to them. But I haven't gone through some of the curriculum and courses in uni, understanding some part of, depression, anxiety, borderline. I kind of, feel bad and said, oh my God, I wish I had known. Maybe I won't have treated those my friends or some of my relatives that way. This is what they're going through. Especially even, postnatal depression, where we have people, some of my, relatives that I know that have a baby and then left the baby and just walk away, and they're being classified as bad mother, not knowing what happened. So that is the kind of thing. I'm a long life learner. Like I said to you, I always go back to uni to learn. I was in uni last year doing 2 different courses.
Yeah.
And I was just want to learn about things that I don't understand and to be able to see how can I help. So that was made me to go to mental health. It was just my own, relationship with my daughter when I just had my daughter and being in a mother baby unit, and I couldn't just comprehend it. And do not laugh. There's one part of it when I went working that nursing mother baby unit, and they were telling me about all their feelings. And in my head, I'm like, I'm having these same feelings as well. Then I went home, I said to my husband, I think I've got postnatal depression. He was like, no, you don't. Yeah. He said, so he was telling me about some few features. He said that because this lady was saying she was feeling overwhelmed, she couldn't get more sleep. And I'm like, oh, I was ticking the boxes because I could remember, like, I have a baby at home. I'm in here. This feeling is but mine is not, well, whatever feeling I'm feeling, I'm still able to, do my duties as a mom. I'm not being, incapacitated that I couldn't do the duty of a mom. So I think that's the difference. They're realizing that this is one problem, but I can solve it. I can put a solution to it here and there, whereby some people can navigate that. So they need help to navigate that. And I think support helps as well. Sometimes when something started in our mental health, and when it started, you're not able to recognize it. But if you're in the middle of people that can recognize it, quickly, you might be able to get help and support. So majority of it sometimes is, I wouldn't call it negligence, but not being able to recognize and getting help at the earliest stage of the illness.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? Is mental health talked about a lot in African communities?
Yes, now.
Yeah.
A lot. And a lot of, I don't know, there's a lack of services that are culturally appropriate for people from African communities, especially because there's some of the mental health that are rooted in, cultural, the cultural aspect of things in living in a different environment, in living in different world. And there's another aspect of, not getting support. There's another aspect of people just think you're from Africa, you're supposed to be tough.
Yeah.
And the other aspects of, services as well, which people always talk about a lot, accessing services, the service. And sometimes you have a situation whereby people say the service is available, but do people want to access that service? So I always say, take a step back in Australia, right? Australia is already in deep crisis of mental health, no matter what cultural background you come from. Now put another layer of being someone from cultural and linguistic diverse background, or someone from Africa into it. How many psychiatrists do we have here that are Africans? But right now, it's a lot of there's a lot of awareness, because people know the repercussion of if you don't seek help. So I would say, in fact, I'll probably say maybe a lot of awareness, but in the spiritual sense, which is the same for any culture.
Yeah.
I think the religious institution needs to start embracing that as well, to understand that there's a difference between mental health and spiritual attack.
Yeah. Is your interest, because I know that you're a commissioner, the community representative, VMC, and a board member at the Ethnic Communities Council of Victoria.
Yeah.
What do you like about those two positions? Is it because you can actually talk about the narratives behind the policies that need to be done?
And I'm also one of the board of PHN as well, but I'm just here for this thing to represent myself. I'm not representing those organizations in this podcast. Yes. But my role, what I love about those organizations, even with Northwest Mental PHN as well, is because they are organizations that are working and actively addressing this issue. So for me, what I love, especially the VMC, because they're the conduit between the government and the people.
Yeah.
So it giving someone like me the opportunity to bring the voice of others onto the table where policies are made. And being a part of Ethnic Community Council of Victoria, Ethnic Community Council have been in existence advocating for people from ethnic background for more than 40 years. So, and because in Ethnic Community Council of Victoria, there's so many, it's members-based organization. So it's organization-based membership. So you have like a group of people, it's not just one. So they have individual membership and they have organization-based membership. So you get to see lots of views from other people. So sometimes you might be thinking, I'm the only one going through this. So, and because Ethnic Community Council of Victoria has been advocating for ethnical issues for so long, and to key into that, to be able to know what was being done in the past, how can I come in to help, and what can be my own contribution? And even in the public health network, the Northwestern Public Health Network is about some people that are, addressing the health issues of everyone, irrespective of who they are. And that is one thing I love about those three organizations is it is not about, these people and these people. It's about everyone, and being able to listen to everyone and addressing everybody's issue together, as a whole, and not giving preference to one against the other. So I think that's, for me, it's a space where I think I could contribute from my lived experience to my educational experience to the knowledge, and bringing something to the table for a better future and aspiration for people that look like me or whose their journey is just the same as mine.
Yeah. And you also founded, is it Changepreneurs? Yeah.
Yes.
What prompted you to do that?
So Changepreneurs started like a more of a passion project for me. It started like, for me, it wasn't like when we're talking about like role modeling. It started with just some few phone calls and text message from some people saying, "Oh, can you be Auntie Abby? Can you please be my mentor?" And that was almost 8-9 years ago. And it's something that I've always wanted to do, to make sure that when I came to Australia and it was a long journey to get to where I am. It was hard. It wasn't something that was simple, but I take it as a challenge. So for me, I haven't had a talk with those people when they called me, and I sat down with them, some of them one by one, about 3 or 4. I started with just 4 young ladies. And some of them were born here. Majority of them grew up here. They came here when they were really small. And I've talking to them, I've realized they were facing the same issues that I was facing when I first came here. That was so wrong. I'm like, how can you face the same thing? Like, you were born here, you schooled here, you were raised here. Some of them have never even been to Africa. Some of them came from when they were 3, 4 years old. So to me, it's kind of put a burden in my heart. Like, no, you can't have the same rough journey that I have, because we need a generation that can change the future and change the narratives. So for me, it was about, okay, fine, let's work together. So mentoring those young girls, and I could see a success. I could see a lot of success in them within 3 or 4 years of working with them. And then we'll start growing, from 3 becomes 5, 5 becomes 8, 8 becomes 10, 12, and it just go on from there. And when we share that story, and when I come together and share the aspiration, the vision with them, everybody key into it. And from that moment up to now, knowing that the stories behind it is just success. And it just taught me like the power of support and having a mentor that can guide you, which is when I first came here, I don't have that. Yeah. So to me, is to make sure that their journey is never as long as mine. The journey is not as rough as mine. And the main reason for that is to make sure that they are well equipped for what is coming in the future. So you don't, and that is sometimes when, even in Africa, that's why the race is so slow, because we've been embedded in so much negative narratives and there's not much support. Everybody's been using a lot of African issues for their own individual advantage. Yeah. And to be able to equip the next generation that can stand, hand in hand with any kind of race, any community, and be well equipped to talk about it, and to be able to have equal opportunity for a job, to be able to tell them what is required to get this job and make sure they're equipped for it. Equal opportunity to entrepreneurship, to different things, to just being themselves. Because, like Nelson Mandela used to say, like, of what issue is it when you cannot live a life that is of your own potentials? You know what I mean? Like there's no passion in playing small and settle for something that you're less capable of achieving.
Yeah.
So to me, it's about letting them know that they are not defined by the color. They're not defined by their history, but they come like a unique person, and they've got everything to offer this world to make the world a better place and to thrive. So for me, it's about, encouraging them, mentoring them to thrive, and to thrive beyond what they even think they can be.
Yeah. Do you see the success stories?
All the time. We got one last week. One of my mentees just got appointed onto a board in her 20s. And we have some of them that has I'll probably say about 4 or 5 over a period of 3, 4 years with an ATAR score of over 90, high 90s.
Yeah.
I've got someone who doesn't have, confidence in speaking in the public and now ready to, take the world. I've seen someone who feels as if they can't do nursing and now they're almost finishing their Bachelor of Nursing. So we've got people who've changed careers who are not even afraid of changing their career. So we've got entrepreneurs who are, working towards different kind of, a kind of business that is environmental friendly. Yeah. So to me, it's just, it's not that mentorship for me is not like a one-way stream. I've learned from them as well, and they've shaped me, and the success story just keep me going.
Yeah. Yeah. What's one or two stereotypes that you would like to break with the Australian public about African people?
Oh, one or two. I was thinking you're gonna give me a chance to say 10 or 15. I'm just joking.
We'll roll it on to the next episode.
No, I'm just joking. I think the first thing about African people is to understand that African people are intelligent. They're not dumb.
Yeah.
Because especially when everybody see, the first thing that I think people will always see when they see an African people is, I wonder if they're intelligent, because of the deep-rooted history of slavery. And not, so that's one thing. The second thing that I want people to know that is African people are contributing to the economy of Australia as well. In terms of tax, in terms of making this place a better place, in terms of profession. So they're professional African people. It's not just about reading about crimes and Africa, or Africa and embezzlement, Africa and corruption. It's not related to that color. Yeah. That corruption, crime, it's crime has no color. Corruption has no color. Dumbness has no color as well. So it shouldn't be attributed to one particular race.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. I know that we often hear the media portrayal of, African, young African gangs and stuff like that. Is that something that the community is trying to stop or trying to work with the officials in changing? Or
I think honestly, it's a complex question, and it's a complex, there's no one way to it, because I wouldn't want to emphasize more on African gang or African this, because like I said to you, there's so many other ethnic groups that has the same thing. So I would not want to isolate Africans as, is the government working with African with regard to this? The government needs to work with every ethnic group that has that same issues in the same way. But in our community is what we're trying to address. And I think talking about mental health as well, like what you talk about, you have to understand some of the few things that, people are being exposed to in this community, in this space, in the country that we are. There's so many things that can affect your mental health to get to that stage of crime. When people come from a refugee background, when they're not getting the support that they want, they needed, when their parents are not that well supported as well, where there's a disturbed family unit, and it's not particular to a particular race, like I'm saying, it's still the same for everyone. But we're just understanding that the journey that people make here can affect who they are, what they are, and how they behave. And even like, being displaced with your, cultural heritage as well. It's something that can affect people's mental health. So I think, the government should work with everyone, like every race that has this issue of gang or, all sort of things that I think it's not morally appropriate.
Yeah. I got another question that just came to my head, and that was, do you find African young people struggle with understanding their own culture?
That's an interesting question. I think to some extent, it's not probably understanding their culture per se. It's about identity.
Yeah.
In terms of, some of them have never even been home. So everything that they've learned about who they are and, what they are and what their cultural heritage is probably what they've read in the books, what their parents told them. So I think to some extent, yes, that they're struggling with identity, because you're living in two worlds. Like the principle in my house might not be the principle of what is out there in the Australian constitution or legislation or how people behave. Like in my own country and my culture, you're an adult when you can feed yourself, and you have to be, and you're married.
Yeah. So
even at 19, 20, 21, your parent can tell you off. They can still tell you, this is what to do. This is what I want to see. So they kind of find out, like over here, at the age of maybe 18, that person become an adult, legally. But sometimes in the African community, because of the way like someone like me was brought up and the way our kids are growing here, there's always a conflict in reaching an agreement. So it's something that majority of the parents are struggling with, is something that majority of the kids are struggling with, but we're getting there. So I will say to some extent about identity, but at the same time, I've loved the new movement of majority of the African Australians now is an African people that lives in Western world, that they begin, like what I said to you when I went home, they begin to embrace who they are and wanting to know more about their culture, reading more about their culture, sharing more about their culture, coming together as a collective, as people from African descent, and sharing knowledge. Sometimes they make fun of the parents and how we act, and they just laugh it off. So I think it's a work in progress, and I'm happy that at least there's an awareness and consciousness of wanting to relate to their culture and embracing who they are.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm talking to you today. I've had tears at the back of my eyes a few times. I love hearing you talk. I love hearing you and your passion and your willingness to share, which is everything that the VU Spirit of VU Award is about.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you for joining me today, but I've got one final thing I always say is, what would you like our listeners to walk away with from our conversation?
I want our listener to take away that, no matter what you do not let any negative experience let you down. Do not let any negative experience overwhelm you. Be kind to others, reciprocate with kindness, and be yourself. Embrace who you are, embrace your identity, and understand the power of support. That needing support is not weakness. It's just understanding the stage that you are. And most especially to be able to understand that you're a light. Whatever you're doing, either the light is dim at the moment or the light is being turned off. As a being, as a soul, as a spirit, you are a light. So while you're probably like open, stick to that virtual light, because that virtual light is your step to the reality of a real light. So don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Even if the only hope that you can hold on to is the virtual light, hold on it, build on it, work on it, and make sure that the light shines.
That's beautiful. That's I've got teary again. Look, I want to thank you, Abby, for joining us. And guys, listen out for the next podcast. And please, I just want to say thank you to Abby. So thanks, Abby.
Thanks, AJ, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Guys, I'll see you at the next podcast. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.